hi Nina, hi Elsa, hi Dragana. I hope you're all doing well. Let's start with quick introductions, please. Please tell us who you are, where you work, and a little bit of what you do. Nina, would you like to go first?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nina. I'm leading the CRM team at Babbel. It's a language learning app based in Berlin and New York, entertaining language learners around the world. And it's our job essentially with the classic CRM channels like email and mobile push notifications to guide our learners along their language learning journey, basically from the moment they register for a free account in our app, through hopefully subscribing for full access, building and sustaining a language learning habit, and ultimately language learning success.
Thank you, Nina. Elsa, would you like to give a quick intro of yourself, please?
Sure. So hello, everybody. I'm Elsa. I'm currently leading the CRM team at Taxfix. Basically, Taxfix is a platform that allows people to do their tax return easily and also in an optimized way, which means that we also help people by asking them questions like how to improve the way they do their tax return to basically deduct more things that maybe they are not aware of and basically have a better tax return. Our main market is Germany, but we also expanded recently to Italy and France. And as was also mentioned for Babbel, our main channels for CRM are email, push notifications, and in-apps. And hopefully soon we will also have web push as well for our laptop users.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elsa. Dragana, could you please give us a quick intro of yourself and what you do?
Hello to everyone. My name is Dragana Janinovic. I work in Telecom. It's the leading telco operator in Montenegro and part of Deutsche Telekom group. As the leader of the business, my responsibility is mainly to enable our users and our customers to use digital channels to be able to do everything what's needed with the telco services online and to encourage them to do so. So we, together with the colleagues from the product department and from customer experience, we are doing our best to drive our customers to be online and digital.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction. Let's start with the questions. I think we have an exciting list of questions as well. So let's start with one of the most basic yet crucial aspects of user segmentation, that is insights or factors used for differentiating user cohorts. Right? Out of the most commonly used differentiators like demographics or user behavior or geographic locations or psychographic cohorts, do you prioritize a few more than the others? And if yes, why so? And if it's a combination of a few or more, how do you decide the mix of cohorts or segments? Elsa, would you like to go first here?
Sure. So yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think it's a mix of both for Taxfix. Normally, apps in general, like companies in general, tend to make usage of the behavioral segmentation, which completely makes sense and it's completely needed, especially to automate journeys and to make the experience of the user that makes sense somehow. So behavioral is definitely part of it. If a user drops at a specific part of our question flow to their tax return, we have campaigns to help him continue further, but demographics are also playing a big role lately for us, especially with the current situation that the world is living, where people are just unemployed or having specific situations that they might not have in a normal year. It becomes very important also to do demographic segmentation and also base it on what kind of user we are talking to. Is it a student? It's a married couple? It's a full-time employee? It's a freelancer? And this kind of segmentation is becoming super important for us. Mm-hmm. Because basically depending on your situation in that sense, you might want to do your tax return in a way or in another way. And there are many financial and tax tips that people can receive based on that, right? Like maybe for students, there are a lot of information that they need to know that maybe for a full-time employee, it doesn't make any sense, right? So this type of segmentation is playing a big role, especially this year. And we are basically building a lot of CRM campaigns with that information, personalizing it based on what type of user we're talking to. So we still make usage of the behavioral one, but this part is also like super important at the moment.
You do a combination of
Exactly.
right? Great, great. Dragana, what's your take on this? Do you do a mix, or do you prefer to stick to the usual user behaviors? And how do you go about segmenting your users?
Segmentation strategy actually depends on the channel where we run campaigns. If we are today focusing on the app and the usage of the app, then mainly we use user behavior and user properties to segment. In order to use our self-care application, user needs to be logged in. He needs to add the services he gets with the telco. So basically, we have really a lot of information about the customer. So depending on the campaign, we usually use data that we have regarding the existing plans, the existing usage that customer use, something that he does or doesn't do through the app or even other channels, because besides the information that we have available within the app itself, we often use the CRM data, make custom segments based on it, uploaded on different platforms, and use it for the segmentation. So segments surely depends on the campaign as itself, but most usually they are a combination of behavior and properties of the user.
Okay, that's great to know. Thanks, Dragana. I would also like to hear from Nina. Babbel does engagement post-acquisition, right, Nina? So what's your perspective on, creating these segments and cohorts?
Yeah, so for us, behavioral segmentation clearly is most important, because what we want to get people to have a behavior in the app. So if they displayed any previous behavior, that's the closest we can get to assessing what their next behavior may be. So whenever we have that, that's what we would use. If we, for instance, take people who completed a certain lesson and send them a similar content, then we can get up to 10 times more conversion than a generic message to everyone. So whenever we have that, that always takes precedence. Also for triggered messaging, for instance, as Elsa was mentioning, the automation aspect, of course, is also important. Demographic we use mainly just for the logistics, like the country someone lives in, the language, because we're a global company and we need people to receive the message in a language they understand, of course. Otherwise, we don't even track that much. What we track during the registration process is mainly, which is also optional, so we also don't have that sort of data for everyone, an age bracket. And the motivation that they have for learning a language, which is mostly what used to be travel. Unfortunately, in 2020, that's not so prominent anymore. Or career, for instance, or to be able to talk to family and friends, for instance. But we actually have seen that sort of segmentation often doesn't even make such a big difference, which was quite interesting for us. So we don't do it that often. We do sometimes segment by the learning language to send specific content or a specific promotion when it's a certain holiday or something in the country of the language that you're learning, and that also has usually up to 20% better conversion. So I would also say it's a mix, and it very much depends on what is your company, right, and
Absolutely.
And your app.
So user behavior is at the forefront, and the rest of all, the remaining kind of cohorts is more to do with the kind of campaigns you plan to create. Absolutely. So moving on to the next question. So it's generally said that if you need any more than 3 dimensions of factors to define your initial segment, it can get too complicated, right? So what's your take? What's your thoughts on this? Dragana, would you like to give us your thoughts on this, please?
Well, I think that in everything what you do, you should try to do it as simple as possible. So having that in mind, I generally agree with your statement. When I look at our campaigns, we usually use 2 to 3 maybe factors for managed segments. But like in everywhere, you shouldn't be, exclusive. If you have some really specific campaign that requires more, then do so. It's again is on marketeer to decide. But generally, for me, the simpler the better.
Got it. Thank you. What's the most commonly used, kind of mix you in telecom at least? You prefer to stick to simple segments? Is that what it is?
Well, yes. As I said, usually we use 2 to 3 maybe factors for segmentation. For example, it is usually combination of the properties and the behavior of the user. For example, let's have a prepaid campaign, and we will look at the users who have at least one prepaid service within the app, who maybe didn't top up recently, and whose let's say monthly spending is around some limit that we set. That would be just an example of an usual campaign that we run.
Got it. Thank you for that example. I think it makes it helps a lot. Nina, what's your take on the same? What are the factors you consider while defining your initial segmentation for any of your campaigns that you run?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with Dragana. Simple is always best. If it's the best way, I would always say you should have as many segments as you need, but as few as possible. So it's always this impact effort balance that you need to find. Essentially, segmentation is also just there to make sure we're not sending the same to everyone, but ultimately we would want to send a very individualized campaign to every single person. That's of course the one-to-one communication we're going for, but because that is not manageable, hardly manageable for anyone, segmentation is the middle way, right? So that's what I would say. It's really about finding which parameters really make a difference for that particular goal that you're having and your product, and then combining them and seeing what still makes a difference and where it stops making enough of a difference, let's say. So for instance, if we have we once segmented, for example, English campaigns or Spanish campaigns by certain geographics in Europe or out of Europe or something like that, and we noticed at the end of the day it's not really bringing the return on time invested. So
got it. It was pretty much the same as the generic campaigns you ran. Okay, got it. Elsa, what about you? What's your take on the same?
I actually don't fully agree here. I mean, I understand that it's the simple the better, but especially now in these times where CRM is becoming more and more about personalization, I think it's actually very important to segment and personalize a lot of communications. At the same time, it's also very important, as Nina was mentioning, the fact that we don't segment too much and we end up with like a super small segment that actually cannot have a business impact, even though like maybe the conversion rate it's super high because it's really well segmented. The campaign completely makes sense for that segment. No? So I think it's about finding a balance, but we also need to take into account that people receive a lot of emails in their inbox every day. People are receiving loads of things, and to actually keep our communication relevant, we need to personalize, and it's important that we segment, and probably sometimes more than 3 dimensions are needed. No? So I understand that we need to focus on the impact, and segmenting too much can drive like at the end like really little results, but probably also not oversimplifying. No? So I would be like a bit in the middle of this.
Got it. Elsa, could you give us an example, please? What's the most relevant segmentation you use in Taxfix in these terms? Something more than the usual cohort.
So a Taxfix it's quite interesting because yeah, as you can imagine, doing a tax return requires like filling out a lot of data, and users need to go through a big question flow. No? So they provide us actually a lot of information from them to be able to do their tax return. So there is a lot of data to play around. So at the end, we of course base it our campaigns a lot on where they dropped, right? Like people want to do the tax return, and even though our platform simplifies a lot the way of doing it, there is still like many things to take care. You need to upload your data, your payslip, and then many people drop in the middle, maybe because they don't understand the specific questions. They are not clear on, okay, what do I need to do actually? Like, what does this question mean? Do I need to provide information about, I don't know, like my remote working? I bought a computer. Should I deduct it? Should I not? So it's very common in Taxfix that people drop in the middle of the flow. And for us, like we play a lot around with that kind of data. Did the user drop at this specific question, at this specific question? So we try to make it more and more granular and base it really on, okay, what screens they visited. It's the first time they are submitting, because if they dropped in the funnel, but it's the second time they are submitting with us, that we treat them differently, right? So yeah, there is a lot around those type of dimensions. So for example, a user saw the payslip screen to upload their payslip, but they didn't actually upload it. Then we try to provide users with a lot of information about how to do it, what they are expected to do, and kind of help them to continue and have a nice experience until the submission.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example. Thank you, Elsa. So I'd like to move on to the next question here. So basically, with tons of data points and variables, you companies have access to today, right? It might kind of get overwhelming today to even create your segments. How do you handle multiple moving parts in the equation and build a segmentation framework? And what's your take? Like a simple approach in the beginning and then a post analysis is better, or do you prefer to invest more time in a detailed approach of these segments in the beginning and then segment the users entirely and then go ahead and send out your campaigns? What do you think is the better approach here, and how do you handle the different data points you have access to? Nina, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I think again it's kind of a thing in the middle. I would recommend. I think you should have, if you want to do any segmentation at all, you should start with some kind of a hunch, because I think sending out a batch and blast campaign to everyone and then trying to find the golden nuggets, like what is exactly the correlation with which data point. I think you need a very advanced team of analysts and then also the data tech behind that in order to do that. So I would start with I mean, there are some frameworks out there, like the RFM framework about recency, frequency, monetary value. In our case, that would be probably learning intensity rather than monetary value. And then, yeah, maybe you have some research done already. Maybe you have a user research team. You have some qualitative insights on where maybe your personas lie, and then you can start sending your campaigns, your segmented campaigns, and then you see what actually makes a difference or not. And then in that, maybe you can do a post analysis and then see what. If there's maybe anything else that you missed, or
you do have some amount of pre-analysis before you do your segmentation. Can I say that?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
okay.
if you have the manpower to do that. That's also, a lot of CRM teams are a one-man show, and also the tech is not like at the moment where we shouldn't pretend that every single data point that's interesting to CRM is also available to do our segmentation, right? I think that's a big problem for a lot of companies, or for a lot of CRM teams, a big pain point, that you theoretically know what segment you would want, but you're not able to actually create it.
What's your suggestion for one-man armies, where the CRM team is more like a one-man army? what would your suggestion be?
Yeah, so what we do, and we're luckily a pretty big team now. That's quite a luxury position. But an approach that we have done whenever we were going for a new data point in our system, we were trying to do some sort of manual test first, like a manual export, a manual test to actually prove, to actually make a little business case out of this, to then convince the engineering teams or whoever is responsible to implement it in the system to have an automated setup.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Elsa, what about you? How does Taxfix solve this problem while creating campaigns?
So actually, we are not as lucky as Babbel. Like our CRM team is quite recent, and so like we are getting the resources now, but it's not like we have a big baseline here. But yeah, definitely like for our segmentation, I think someone also was mentioning on the questions, like recency, frequency, monetary. For us, it's really about recency and frequency. Monetary, it's not that relevant for us, especially because everybody pays the same amount, right? Like the tax return, it's quite simplified. Like there is a price that everybody pays unless their tax return it's negative. So basically they don't get money back, then we do it for free. But at the end, it's just very simple. So all our analysis goes really around recency and frequency, and at the same time, it's a bit what I was mentioning before. We also take into account also like, okay, what type of user it is. Like it's a student, full-time employee, a freelancer, like divorced couple, single. This differs a lot, and we also try to analyze the behavior of each of them because it actually differs quite a lot. So yeah, that would be it.
Got it. Dragana, what about you? What's your take on the same? Would like to hear your thoughts as well.
Again, it depends on a campaign. If a campaign is intended for some general public, then I believe that there is really sense in going with the larger segments, and then based on the campaign results, narrow it to smaller segments. On the other hand, we often have campaigns that are not intended for everyone, let's say. For example, we create campaign for retention of likely churners, for example. In that case, we will give to this population maybe some discount, but on the other hand, we don't want to downsell other customers. So in case of this kind of campaigns, we really invest a lot of effort in creating segments and do it really carefully. So it again depends.
Got it. So I think we have some relevant questions around the same in the Q&A section. We quickly answer it during this period because I think it's very relevant to the topic we're already discussing, right? So I think one of the attendees have asked, what factors do you mostly use to segment and target users? Is there any preference given to either recency, frequency, or monetary value, or do all of them carry equal weightage? Do any of you want to take that question?
I can take that one. I think Elsa also partly answered it already for Taxfix. Yeah, for us it would be similar. We have yes, we do have different subscription packages at different price points, but we don't see an awful lot of difference between how those behave. So so as I said, probably for us it would be rather recency, frequency, learning intensity, and then in that order, I would say. Recency is always the first one we're looking at, and then frequency and learning intensity.
Okay, so there is definitely a preference. Okay, I think just mark that. And I'd like to move on to the next question here. So what is the most unusual user segment you have created, and why do you think it's unusual? I think it's quite an interesting question. I would like to hear answers from you guys. Dragana, would you like to start? Dragana, I think you're on mute.
Okay. For me, I couldn't really call any segment unusual. If it has sense, if it is according to the data privacy rules, it doesn't support any kind of discrimination, then it can't be unusual because it's all data. So
Okay.
I think everything is relevant, at least in our case, because we are telco, so we offer really straight plans, devices. Regarding the app, which is more self-care oriented, we encourage users to pay the bills, to do top-ups, to look after their plans through the app. So there wasn't really much use cases where we would need any kind of unusual segmentation in our case.
Okay. I would definitely like to hear from Elsa and Nina as well. Elsa, well, what's your take? Have you ever created any unusual segments? Or, I mean, if yes, well, what was unusual about these segments?
I can't think of any specific one, to be honest. But I think in general, like what's something that could be a bit unusual, it's like based on survey answers. So we try to understand from our users like what they think, what customers that recently submitted or users that registered 1 year ago and never submitted. So we try to really do surveys and understand their behavior so we can adapt also our communication to them. And what we're starting to do more and more is based on the answers we get, if they are happy, if they are unhappy, we have follow-up campaigns. Also, one of our recent surveys that it's going to be super useful for next year, it's about people in Kurzarbeit. I don't know, this is a term we use in Germany. I guess for, I'm not sure about the word in English for other countries, but it's basically these people that got unemployed temporarily during this period of time, during this year. Mm-hmm. So we are trying to understand how many of our users are actually in that situation, so we can assess them in a personalized way. And basically we're building now a lot of surveys around it. We're gathering information of who are in this situation, and we're going to be trying to help them during the end of the year, next year, especially because people in this situation will be mandatory filers for next year. This means that the tax return will not be something optional as it is in Germany, but it will be actually mandatory. And there is a lot of information that needs to be handled to them, and we really want to kind of provide a good experience and help them during the whole process. So that could be something unusual that we never did before, and yeah, it will be a lot of campaigns around this topic for the next month.
Got it. Nina, anything from your end?
Yeah, so I was thinking about it. Yeah, same. We don't have like super unusual segments, but there was one thing. We once had an advent calendar, like an advent calendar campaign. I don't know, in Germany, I think that concept is quite known, that you have towards Christmas in December, like for 24 days, you have like a little gift or something like that. And we were thinking to have every day for 24 days an email with some fun fact about Christmas or the holidays in the country of the language that you're learning, recipes, etc. And but we were also thinking, okay, some people may be annoyed every day for 24 days. So we were having a very prominent separate opt-out link just for that campaign. So people wouldn't just unsubscribe from everything. But there were quite some people who just clicked on every link, just opened the email and clicked on everything. And they were actually complaining to our customer service later and then saying, oh no, I clicked on this link and now I'm not receiving the emails anymore and I want to keep receiving them. And so we had to manually create then a segment of whoever opted out of this campaign, but then adding like the email addresses of the people that actually wanted to still receive it. So the segment was then, I think it was like 100 people after in the end or something like that. So that was a bit of an unusual segment because it was called something like opted out, but actually still wants to be opted in or something like that.
Got it. So yeah, I think I think that. Did you initially target the entire segment, or was there a segmentation for the initial user base you targeted for this kind of campaign?
I think we targeted our usual segment, but the first email was indeed, it had a bit more prominent, this is going to be every day. If you don't want to receive this, then click here.
Okay, sure. So I think we can move on to the next question in our list of questions. So I think we often hear about the incorrect impact measurement or creating too many small segments or relying on outdated strategies as as some of the challenges faced by segmenting users, right? Based on your experience, what are some of the most common mistakes made while approaching segmentation while you create segments for your campaigns? Dragana, would you like to take this first?
You already have some usually mistake in your question. Actually, having too small segments really can sometimes lead to the opposite result, because every time when you segment customers, sure, the intention is to have more personalized offer and approach, but on the other hand, you must be aware that you exclude other users. So having too small segments really can have opposite results. Also, what I can see as a often mistake is maybe using outdated variables. For example, something that was relevant for the user 10 days ago maybe is not today. Let's say if we want to sell some device and we see that this is the user that used that brand of the phone, etc. We must also take in the account if the user made some purchase in some small period, because if we let's say made this segment 10 days before, today this is not probably the same segment as well. When we are creating segments over online platforms that use real-time data, this type of mistake is not something that is happening because you have real-time data and you are creating segment based on data right now. But in case when we create segment based on CRM, it usually, and data warehouse, for example, it usually takes a few days and they are not that fresh. And sometimes we really must take into consideration that between the time when we run the campaigns and actually the time when the segment was created, there may be some changes, and that they can really influence the results.
Great, Dragana. I think that's absolutely true. It depends on how real time your segments are while you're running your campaigns. So I completely agree with you on that. Elsa, what's your take on the same? Where do you think the common mistakes are while creating segments, and how do you go about that?
I think here it's quite similar to what Dragana was mentioning. The most common mistake I've been seeing in many different companies is segmenting too much. It's a bit what I was saying before, right? Like sometimes we want to personalize so much and we want to really do a campaign that has amazing conversion rates. So, like if you target those specific people, then they're going to convert amazingly. But then that makes sense. But when the audience reach is too small for the effort you are actually making, because at the end, creating a campaign, preparing everything takes a while, and just doing it for a very small audience, then it's just nonsense, right? Because you cannot get actually the effort back somehow. Like it's just not having enough impact. And I think this is one of the main mistakes I've been seeing again and again. That would be the main one.
Okay, I think that also holds quite true. Nina, what about your take on this? How does have you noticed any common mistakes marketers do while segmenting cohorts?
I would agree with both of my fellow panelists. One, of course, segmentation should always be up to date, meaning segmentation should always be fluid and allow for dynamic changes between segments. Should never be static, because it can change within minutes whether someone is actually in love with your product or not engaged at all. And also, I'd say both under and over investing in segmentation. Under investing, as we already said, is probably quite common when when the CRM team is quite small, when there's not enough tech support, you spend all this money in acquisition to get a person's email address or a person's push opt-in. And then it's like, okay, now you do whatever you want with it, because now, you know, the money ends kind of, or the investment in time, effort, whatever. But over investing as well. If you have the possibility, you shouldn't just segment wildly just because you can. Again, it's all about the balance. What is worth investing into, and if you segment, you need to follow up with the proper personalized content, because that's why you segment in the first place. If you still send kind of every segment the same thing, then there's no use in segmenting at all. So if you cannot kind of put your content where your mouth is when you segment, then there's also no use.
I think that's a great point, Nina. So I mean, I think I also completely agree with that. And so we would like, I mean, there are a couple of more questions in this list, and we will take the Q&A post that. So yeah, there are instances where, despite putting in a lot of time and effort, user segmentation has gone wrong. Do you have any such use cases? I think we've kind of answered this question on a high level, but you know, but have you seen instances where you know, because you've not run a good enough pilot, or you've not had some control groups in place, you know, you've seen user segments going wrong, right? So do you have any personal experiences where you know, you have come across such problems? Any of you, if you have any experiences to share, that would be great. I think we've kind of answered this question, but you know, we can touch base on this again.
I can take it. I think like that's a good point. Now the control group and the action group, that's for me super important in everything we run, to actually understand if a campaign is successful, right? If you just target 100% of your audience and you just see amazing results, you are like, oh, my campaign, wow, rocked it. But actually, like, maybe people were actually likely to convert anyway, and the campaign didn't actually make a difference, right? So for us at Taxfix, it's super important to always have a control group. We have a 10% global control group where we measure basically all our CRM efforts, and we always try to understand, like, okay, is the control group performing worse than the action group? So the 90% of people that are receiving CRM campaigns. And yeah, sometimes it also happened, right? Like, you realize that actually something is being not positive for the users, and you see that the action group is not performing better than the control group, or even sometimes performing worse. So that for us was super important, to always optimize our campaigns and our segments, and making sure that we are actually helping users and sending them relevant communications. And also across experimentation, we also learn a lot, right? So we try to experiment with absolutely everything, and we just don't make decisions based on, okay, I want to do this because I know it's gonna be amazing, but more like, okay, let's test it, let's understand the behavior of the users, and based on that, we optimize our campaigns. So in that sense, yeah, we made mistakes sometimes, and we just keep learning from experimentation and control groups.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Elsa, and I think we have a very relevant question in our Q&A regarding the same. So I'm just going to read out the question, and if you have any any pointers over there, that would be helpful. After creating user segments, most marketers compare the performance of the target group with the control group. How do you define such control groups, and what is generally the ratio of users in the target versus control group? What's your deciding factor on, you know, how much should your control group be versus your target group be, and how do you come up with that number?
So I take it myself as well. So we normally try to build a control group that is big enough to actually get insights from it, but at the same time, not that big to actually lose a lot of users, because we know that at the end, like, CRM campaigns actually make our users convert better. No? So we always have this situation in between. So that's why we build our 10% global control group. And normally when there is something specific that we are going to build, either an experiment or a new control group for a specific campaign or a specific segment, then we normally work a lot with the data science team. So we really try to understand, okay, like, what is going to be statistically significant, what makes sense for this type of campaign or project that we're working on. So it's always really a decision based on data, and we really trust them also to make the decision together and not only on our own based on our gut feeling.
Absolutely. Nina, Dragana, any thoughts on this? How does your respective companies use control groups and how do you go about creating your campaigns using these?
Yeah, testing is super relevant. Actually, that could also have been an answer to what's the biggest mistake in segmentation is not testing your segmentation, because so many times, actually, when I think about my experience at Babbel, maybe more often than not, the intuition is also wrong. Yeah, usually. So we do test for sure. We always test, unless we have 100% reason to believe that it works from prior testing or other research that we have. In the terms of quantity, usually we try 50-50 if possible, because that is most likely to give you significant results at the end of the day, or at the fastest. But if we're particularly confident in something, we may have the test group a little bit larger. Or if we're testing something particularly risky, then of course a little bit smaller. And then we would maybe increase the group sizes if we repeat the test at a later point.
So you do not, you prefer varying it based on the campaigns or the tests you're running, and it's not a global control group per se. Got it. Dragana, anything from your end? How does Telecom approach this problem?
Well, sure, we test as well and track the results of every campaign and try to learn, but also to adjust during the campaign based on the results. I wouldn't have much to add regarding control groups. Sure that we use it. We sometimes also compare to the results of the other direct channels, for example, call center outbound calls, compared to some digital campaigns, and then compared to some segment of the user that weren't at all in any of these audiences. But in some cases, there is not so relevant to have maybe control group, but we compare to the historical data. That would be, for example, recently we had a campaign to encourage users to more use the app for bill payments. In that case, the relevant comparison was made in the comparing of the number of paid bills after the campaign to the number before we had this kind of campaign.
Okay.
In this case, there wasn't need to have some kind of a control group. So, like everything before, it really depends on the campaign, and what Nina said in defining this percentage of the control group. It's also depending on the campaign. If it's more general campaign, then we look to have it 50-50%. But in case if it could be sensitive, if we are afraid that maybe we will have some positive sides of the campaign, but will cause some more negative, then we will certainly go with a really small segment and then have it broader or leave it.
Got it, Dragana. I couldn't agree more on that. So I have a quick announcement to make here, and we'll continue with our last question post that, and then post that we'll even take the remaining questions in the Q&A. For the attendees who have come in, so we have a quick announcement. As a part of our team up with Customalytics, we are offering you the chance to get a personalized one-on-one in-depth health check and consultation of your mobile app by a team of specialized app doctors. If you're interested, you can get your app marketing infrastructure and plan reviewed by experts, free app, and it's absolutely free of charge. We'll be giving you a poll now. You can see that in your screens right away. So please go ahead and vote for it and give us, let us know if you're interested or not. Yeah. And so moving on to the last, but definitely not the least question. But all the data consciousness and privacy issues around the world and the imminent changes in the IDFA policies in the recent times, what are your thoughts on data collection for segmentation, right? How do you go? I mean, what do you think is the most important things you require for segmentation? Nina, would you like to take this first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I believe people nowadays expect personalized experiences. So, and I think they're aware that certain things are tracked, and usually the recommendation is to if you're not sure someone will be fine with sharing certain data, to actually give them the reason why you're tracking it, saying, hey, if you give us this information, we can better personalize the experience for you. I'm not even sure that always has to be the case. I think many apps, like certainly for Babbel, people expect that things will be tracked, like the learning progress. I think nobody was surprised when they did a learning session and we sent them a follow-up afterwards or remind them of the next learning session, because that's what they would expect us to be doing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really more about, I think for CRM, it's not that difficult, because when people are signed up for something to receive and opted in to receive certain messaging, they do expect that certain data will be tracked. It's certainly a different story in pure advertising and acquisition. Of course, with iOS 14 coming up, there are a lot of changes in that area, which certainly benefit the people who are annoyed by too much advertising. But I think for CRM, people would actually want to have as personalized an experience as they possibly can get.
Sure. Elsa, what about you? What do you think about the entire data consciousness, which is currently there in consumers?
I completely agree with Nina. Completely agree. I think for CRM, it's a bit different than for acquisition channels. Like, users to receive CRM communications, they need to be opted in. They already signed up. They already probably have your app. So it's a bit different. People are happy to send you the data. Otherwise, we cannot reach out to them. And I think it's completely important, right? Like for Taxfix as well, like based on the data we have, the usage they are doing from the product, the information they are providing us, this is how we can help them actually. If we don't know, like we can send them generic campaigns, but they are irrelevant for them probably, because we are going to be talking about another use cases that are not valid for them. So I think finding the balance, it's very important. Data privacy is completely important, but in our case, in CRM, people accept it, and then it completely makes sense for them. It actually helps them to have a nice experience, to receive relevant content. So I think, I think for CRM, like it makes sense, and it's actually making the experience of all the users better.
Absolutely. I think it's important to educate your end consumers on, why you're tracking certain data, right? So, Dragana, what's your take on this? And you being in the telecom sector, do you how does it is it any different, or do you agree with Elsa and Nina on the same?
Well, it's really important topic, and especially in telco industry, we have really strict rules in regards. So we could have really a lot of data about our customers, and so we have really strict rules. What data shouldn't be used. How do we store the personal data? It's monitored, and it must be really aligned with the GDPR and the general protection of the user privacy and the data. For all personalized campaigns that we use, we must have and direct, actually any kind of direct marketing, we must have the permission of the user for doing so. So we are following these rules. Generally speaking, I really think that this is a topic that is very important, and from one side, sure, for marketeers, having enough data to do the fine personalization is must have today. For the users, I think that they have a benefit to receive content that is relevant for each one of them, and not something that is completely not in the interest. On the other hand, I think that some general knowledge about all these tracking through the digital channel is being more and more awakened, let's say. Users and all digital channels are getting more aware of the tracking, and I think that personally it's not really nice for anyone to think about that there is some computer make some really exact profile personality of you, and that can even predict what you will do next. So it's a little disturbing. I think that this topic will really shape the direction of the marketing in the next period. So we will see.
Sure, Dragana. I think that's a very different approach from the general CRM perspective as well, right? So I think we quickly take a few questions from the Q&A from the audience, and in the interest of time, we may not be able to cover all the questions, but we'll try to answer most of it. And yeah, I think there's a few questions. How do you engage active users, loyalists, top customers, and how does it differ from approaching your inactive users? Anyone would like to take that question?
I can quickly take it. So we actually differentiate a lot our communication from active, inactive, and also like users that already used our product once. I think this depends also on the type of product that you have. For us, it's a 1 year thing, right? Like you do your tax return just once a year, and then you repeat next year. So basically users drop in the middle of the flow, maybe because they are just waiting for a document, or maybe because they just find it very complicated, and then we send campaigns based on their drop-off points to kind of bring them back to the funnel. And for example, here we do a big differentiation between customers. So customers for us means basically users that already purchased, submitted with us, and users are the ones that register but never submitted. So here our communication varies a lot because basically you don't need to provide so much product information to people that already know it. So we try to help them to continue the flow, but without so much product information as we would probably do for users that never used our app before. Also for inactive customers, then we try more aggressive ways of reactivating them, and probably at some point we also send vouchers to them. Here we do a lot of experimentation around, so it's probably like half of the people receive one thing, half of the others receive another, but basically for inactive customers that we already know that have a value for us, that they already used our app, is where we get a bit more aggressive somehow, and we try to really reactivate them, even if it means that we need to give out some discounts. And for loyalty, we are building it now, but of course, this is the goal of every company, I guess, to make our users loyal. And for that, basically, we are also building like a proper loyalty program where we give some special gifts and some special discounts, or maybe partners to basically make our users retained and be just super loyal to our brand.
Got it, Elsa. Any other approaches here, Nina, Dragana? Any other different approaches you guys take?
Not necessarily very different, but yeah, I can also, I think actually the last question is going in that direction as well, like distinguishing between what campaigns do we have for loyal customers, what campaigns do we have to re-engage dormant users. In general, the more engaged someone is, the more we reach out to them usually. If someone is very inactive and dormant, we try to like not push them or email them every day. And in terms of content, actually it's a little bit the opposite of what Elsa was saying. We communicate more about our product with our more loyal customers. because there's clearly more interest, and they will also know much better what we're talking about. If we talk about our dormant users, it is very often they fall dormant very early. Usually it decides within the first week of learning whether you're going to be an engaged learner for a while, or whether life takes over and you're not going to build the habit after all. And there we would rather be very high level about actually introduce them to the product, because they may never even have discovered the whole thing in the first place before they actually stop learning. So that's probably that. And in terms of upselling, of course we would upsell the more expensive packages to the more engaged learners. Like we have a all languages package, where you can have access to all languages. Usually people just buy one, but then if we detect that someone is a very engaged learner, then we would try to upsell them to a multi-language package.
Sure, Nina. I think there's a very interesting question in the Q&A. Do you have any proven approach to measuring the success of user segments which has yielded positive results time and again? Dragana, do you have any thoughts on this? Elsa, Nina, please feel free to in case, anyone who has any thoughts on this.
Well, I can take it, sure. As I said, for every campaign, we do tests and we do analysis during the campaign and after campaign. We measure, we make comparison with the control group, with the historical data, with the conversion rate, usage rate, etc. And if it's possible, we adjust campaign accordingly. This all is a learning process for every marketeer. I think that Nina said that the intuition was sometimes wrong. Even if you are a long time in the business, you cannot always predict the behavior of the users. So you really need to listen to your users. What works, what doesn't work in the campaign, in the segmentation. Segmentation is surely just one part of the campaign. Test as much as possible, measure all available data, and take notes, learn accordingly.
Sure, I think that's a great answer, Dragana. So with the interest of time at hand, I would like to wrap up this session for today. Thanks everyone for being part of the session, and thank you for the questions and the Q&A session. Shout out to our esteemed speakers and our partners, Taxfix panel, AB Tasty, and Customalytics for making this event possible.